ever been told that like, oh, you're just not going to be able to do this because you have ADHD, or think that your struggles are because of your ADHD? It's like, right, I have ADHD, so I'm just going to struggle with time. Or I have ADHD, so I'm just like always going to forget things. But hey guys, so good to see you. I'm super excited to get in here with you. I'm going to chat with you the real source of ADHD, because my guess is it's not what you think it is. It's not what experts have told you. It's not what you've been told in school. It's not what even your psychiatrist told you. I think it's something different. I have a really different approach, and something that I've seen worked really, really well. So if you want to put in the chat where you're from, and what you do, I'd love to be able to connect the examples with everything that you have going on. So put it in the chat. Let me know if you have any questions. I will answer them as soon as I can get to them. So first off, hey, if you don't know me, my name is Asti Rappaport. I'm a brain engineer for ADHD entrepreneurs, and here to help you solve the root issue to your ADHD challenges. Because guess what? Most of the advice online is very generic or puts on a band-aid. It doesn't actually solve the problems. Yes, medication may help you, but it doesn't actually solve the issue as to why you have this challenge. So we want to get to the real source. We want to get to understand what is going on here, so that way we can actually solve those issues. So let's take a step back for a second. I want you to really understand what is happening in your brain. Really, what happens in everyone's brain, whether you have ADHD or not? Okay. We tend to thinking of like, hey, I'm thinking now. But guess what? Thinking is happening even when you're not just stopping and thinking. Your brain is thinking. Your brain is going through all different pieces of information. Your brain is processing and figuring out what you should do. Your brain is constantly thinking as you go throughout and about your day. Every single task that you do requires you to think, whether you realize it or not, including driving, right? Like, you don't think much when you're driving from your home to your office. You've done it so many times. You're just doing it. It's not taking much brain power, but your brain in the background is thinking. If you're writing out a letter to your clients, your brain is thinking. Your brain is processing information. So to really understand how thinking works, I want you to think of thinking in 3 phases. We have the first phase, input, where we take in the information. So every time you are taking in information, right now you are listening to me talk, you are taking in information. You look outside and you see that it's raining, you're taking in information. You see a client's face is looking a little bit like disappointed and not so happy, you're taking in information. That's the first phase, input. The second phase is elaboration. This is where you're processing. This is what we like to call thinking, but this is like where you're comparing, you're figuring out what's the problem, what's the solution, what am I going to do? This is the elaboration phase. And then the third phase is the output, what you're going to do with information, how your brain thinks about doing the information. Are you saying your thoughts in a clear and concise way? Are you stopping and like being impulsive, or are you stopping and like thinking as you're taking your action? All that comes in the third phase of thinking. So to recap, we have 3 phases of thinking. First phase is input, where we take in the information. The second phase is elaboration, where we process the information. And the third phase is the output, where we tell the world we know what we know. Now, this is where it gets super, super fun. Within each one of those phases, we have what's called thinking skills or cognitive functions, just a fancy term for thinking skills. These are foundational thinking skills that we are using as we are going about our day. So in the first phase, we have 8 thinking skills. In the second phase, we have 12 thinking skills. And in the third phase, we have another 8 thinking skills, making it a total of 28 thinking skills You got it. There are 28 foundational thinking skills that you are using throughout your entire day, whether you realize it or not. Like I said, without you even realizing it, you right now are using your or some of your 28 thinking skills. Okay, to get trust, you, without even realizing it, are using some of your thinking skills. Now, with 28 of them, naturally, some are going to be stronger and some are going to be weaker, either because of genetics or because of the environment you grew on, or even just because of some of the skills you've been doing your whole life, right? Like you've been driving for quite some time, so the thinking skills related to driving may just be super strong. If you send out a weekly newsletter, that may be super easy for you to do because you've been doing it for a while. However, if the thinking skills related to the tasks is weak, doing that task will be a challenge. Often you'll find yourself procrastinating on it, making a lot of mistakes, getting really frustrated, or even if you do it, you'll often find yourself being very mentally drained by the end of this task because it takes your brain a lot of energy to do this task. Does that make sense so far? Does that make sense? Is everyone like getting what I'm talking about? We have 3 phases of thinking: input, where we take in information; elaboration, where we process information; output, where we tell the world we know what we know. And within each one of those within each one of those phases, there are multiple thinking skills. 28 thinking skills in total. We all have stronger ones and weaker ones. That means every single person on this planet has some stronger thinking skills and has some weaker thinking skills. Here's where it gets super interesting. And this is what is like, will actually change the way you view all your struggles. People with ADHD tend to struggle with the same thinking skills. That is why they have similar struggles. Let's take, for example, time blindness. Have you ever been told you are time blind? Or do you find yourself like constantly being late, even to really important meetings, or staying up really late last minute to be able to fulfill this deadline in time, always leaving things for the last minute? Or maybe not leaving enough time to do a task. You think it's just going to take you 30 minutes, but it ends up taking you 3 hours. You're just like, concept of time is just way too abstract and your brain just can't understand it. Yeah. How many memes online have you seen about time blindness with ADHD? Well, let me tell you something. The reason why you're struggling with time blindness is simply because your brain struggles at this moment, right now, with the thinking skill of understanding time. There is one of the 28 thinking skills called understanding time, and that's your brain's ability to understand how long a task takes, what needs to come before what. Anything related to that time of understanding time is related to this thinking skill of understanding time. If your brain doesn't understand the concept of time and it's too abstract and too all over the place, there is no way you're going to be able to be good at time management, because time management, a prerequisite for time management, is your brain being able to understand time. And so you just get written off and just get told your timeline, you're never going to be able to be timeline, when really your brain has this weak thinking skill of understanding time. As soon as your brain understands that timeline has become so much easier, because now your brain has the foundation to be able to do time management, and that blindness just goes away. Does that make sense? Good. Let me give you another example that's super common with people with ADHD. Have you ever heard people with ADHD struggle with working memory? Working memory is memory needed to do a task right now. So if you've ever been making a box of macaroni and you pour in the macaroni and you look at the box and you're like, hey, this needs 90 minutes. Perfect. I'm going to throw the box. I'm going to the box in more. It's garbage, right? And meanwhile, the water's bubbling and you're mixing your macaroni. And a few minutes later, you're like, hey, how long does it need to be in the pot for? So you go to the garbage and you take out the box and you're like 9 minutes. Oh yeah, now I remember. And then you put it back in the garbage. That is working memory. You don't need to remember those 9 minutes once the macaroni's done, but you need to remember those 9 minutes while you are doing the task. And this shows up in business tons, right? If you're in the middle of a sales call or dealing with a client and a client tells you a piece of information, you need to remember that piece of information while you are working with that client. You don't need to remember it later, but while you're working with that client, you need to remember that piece of information. So any information that you need right now is related to this thinking skill of working memory. But once again, all our ADHD experts like to tell us that people with ADHD struggle with working memory. So you need to find all different hacks and systems and lists and all these sort of situations to help you not forget this important pieces of information that you need for while you're doing this test. But guess what? Working memory is one of the 28 thinking skills. And because it's a skill, that means by definition, your brain can learn it. At this point, your brain may have not learned it yet, but that doesn't mean it can't learn it for the rest of your life. As soon as you improve that thinking skill of working memory, any task related to working memory will become a whole lot easier. Is it starting to make sense? Starting to see how this is all working out and how when we improve the thinking skills related to it, all of a sudden those tasks become easy. Going good? Good. Okay, I'm going to give you one more example. Have you ever walked into a messy room knowing you need to clean it, but instead of going inside the room to clean the room, you walk out and close the door? Way too much information. Way too much things going on here. I can't clean this, just overwhelm. Never mind. I'm not doing this. Or maybe you come back from vacation and you open your inbox and there's like 500 emails and you know you need to deal with them, but there's so many emails and you don't know where to start that instead of even beginning to answer some of those emails, you just open another tab and go do some other work that you need to do. Yeah. Overwhelmed with a ton of information. That comes from a different thinking skill. That comes from a thinking skill of clear perception. Clear perception is about how we take in the information in a clear and organized way. So we take in information through our five senses, how we see, ears, feeling, etc. And most of the time it's coming in a clear and organized way. Hopefully now you're taking in this information that I'm talking and it's coming into your brain in a clear and organized way. Hopefully it's not overwhelming you and you're able to take this all good and organized. But what happens when a lot of information comes into your brain at once? Does your brain get overwhelmed? Is your brain able to function? Does your brain know what to do? Or is it just a whole mush that your brain can't even think? It just blocks it all out. Yeah? That's blurred perception. Old information is just so blurry in your brain doesn't even know what to do. But because it's a thinking skill called clear perception, you can learn it. And your brain can learn to take in a lot of information in a clear and organized way so it doesn't overwhelm you. Is this making sense? Is this making sense? Yes. As soon as we improve these thinking skills, all the tasks related to the thinking skills become easier. And because every single task that you do requires you to use some of the thinking skills, every single area of your life can become easier, even if you have ADHD. So you improve one thinking skill and any task related to that thinking skill will become easier. You improve another thinking skill and any task related to that thinking skill will become easier. I highly suggest that if you're like, what thinking skills am I good at? And what thinking skills do I need to improve? Then you'll want to take the cognitive function assessment, the thinking skill assessment. It's an assessment that will take you probably less than 10 minutes to take, and you will get a really clear idea of where you're standing with each one of the thinking skills. Okay, it goes through all the thinking skills and has you mark from 1 to 5, 1 being weak and 5 being strong, marking down, seeing where you're at with each one of the thinking skills. Now, notice I didn't say you're going to get a right and a wrong for each one of the thinking skills. You're simply marking down on the spectrum how strong or how weak your thinking skills are, because there's no such thing as being perfect at a thinking skill. You can always improve your thinking skill even more and take it to the next level. But if you see you're really good at one thinking skill and you're struggling with another thinking skill, you know which thinking skill would be a good idea for you to start working on. So, the link to that thinking skill assessment is lifepicksuniversity.com/CF, or the link in my bio. So that's lifepicksuniversity.com/CF. Okay. And then if you have any other questions about anything over here, feel free to send me a DM and I'd be happy to answer it for you. Bye for now.